If you'd asked me a year ago what betrayal looked like, I might have said something cinematic: a cheating spouse, a knife in the back, a secret revealed in a family fight. I wouldn't have said a man in a gray suit walking onto my construction site during lunch hour, holding a yellow envelope with my name printed in clean, cruel ink. That's how I found out my family was suing me. The man didn't say much, just handed it over, nodded once, and walked off like he was delivering a takeout order. I opened it expecting maybe some tax notice or something bureaucratic. But then I saw the words, "Petition for support," and beneath that, my parents' names. My sister Mia's name. My full name, listed as respondent. I felt like I'd been punched. My fingers went numb. They were demanding $6,000 a month. $5,000 for my parents. $1,000 for Mia. They cited moral obligation, long-term verbal understanding, and dependent lifestyle maintenance. The cherry on top? A footnote stating all communication must go through their attorney from this point on. I didn't drive home. I couldn't. I sat in my truck in the far corner of the site's gravel lot for 45 minutes, rereading the petition like it might eventually make sense. But it didn't. Just last week, I had told my mom and dad I was scaling back. $1, $200 for them, $100 for Mia, because I was trying to save for a house. They didn't yell. They didn't plead. They just went silent. Now I understood why. That night, I canceled every payment. The recurring rent deposit, the phone bill, the utilities, Mia's gym membership and Spotify subscription. I closed the shared account they'd insisted I use, just to keep things simple. I changed every password. The next morning, I hired an attorney, Ms. Vanessa Ventura, sharp, direct, and thankfully, not shocked. "You'd be surprised how often this happens," she said. "But we're not going to roll over." I started gathering bank statements. 5 years' worth of transactions. Every transfer tagged with a note. I scrolled back to when it started, the day Dad called me crying because they were 2 months behind on the mortgage. I was 22, barely out of trade school, just started working union hours. I wired $1,500 that same day. No hesitation. It was never meant to be permanent. But every time they promised it was just a little longer, a new crisis popped up. A broken furnace. Mom's knee surgery. Mia's first car. Somehow, my income became the safety net they never climbed out of. I didn't complain. I was raised to help. That's what family does. But family doesn't blindside you in court. Ms. Ventura reviewed the paperwork. They don't have a legal leg to stand on. There's no contract, no proof of obligation. Just 5 years of generosity they now want to weaponize. I asked if we could sue back. She raised an eyebrow. For malicious prosecution? Maybe. Let's see how ugly this gets. It got ugly fast. 3 days after being served, I was called into my manager's office. An anonymous complaint had been filed with HR, alleging I was misusing company resources to fund personal legal battles. False, of course. But the complaint cited internal budgeting spreadsheets only Mia had ever seen. I cleared it up, but the damage was done. People started whispering, double-checking my numbers. My credibility, the thing I'd built from the ground up, was suddenly in question. And all I could think was, this is what my family thinks I deserve. Ms. Ventura's voice had a calm, surgical sharpness to it. This case isn't about money. It's about leverage. And you're not giving them any more. That was the tone of our first official strategy meeting. I sat across from her in her downtown office, sterile and pristine except for a single framed quote behind her desk. "Compassion is not a contract." I stared at that quote for a solid minute before pulling out the manila folder I'd brought. 102 printed bank statements, digital transfer logs, text screenshots, Venmo notes. 5 years of my life in dollar signs and pleading messages. I spent the rest of the day compiling a digital war chest. Ms. Ventura wanted everything searchable. I broke it down by category: mortgage aid, utilities, medical expenses, Mia's car and education, emergency transfers. By midnight, I had tagged and indexed $186,440 worth of gifts they now called obligations. Meanwhile, work was getting quieter and tenser. Elena, my boss, hadn't brought up the ethics complaint again, but I could feel the shift. Colleagues hesitated before looping me in. I was no longer Logan, the guy who always delivers. I was Logan, the guy in legal trouble. Reputation, it turns out, is fragile currency. I sent Ms. Ventura screenshots of every thank you message I'd received over the years. One from my mom after I paid their overdue electric bill. "You saved us again, baby. I hate that we always need you." One from Mia when I surprised her with an internship stipend. You're the best big brother in the world. I swear I'll pay it forward someday. Ms. Ventura flagged them for inclusion in our response packet. These reinforce that your support was voluntary. They're also emotionally powerful to a judge, if this ever sees a courtroom. The real sting came late one night when I found a photo Mia had posted 2 months ago. It was from a dinner she had with our parents. In the caption, she'd written, "I don't know where we'd be without family that shows up for each other." The irony almost made me laugh. I was the one who'd shown up for 5 years while they quietly resented me behind smiles. That resentment wasn't new. I started seeing it now, like a photo negative developing in reverse. The side glances when I couldn't make it home for a birthday. The silences when I asked if Mia had gotten a job yet. The way my dad would say, "We appreciate everything," but never once offered to reduce the monthly amount, even when I mentioned my savings getting tight. Mia, especially, always treated my help like it was expected. She'd reply casually, never acknowledging the cost, "You're the one with a real job." That line echoed like a curse now. The next day, I forwarded everything to Ms. Ventura. She called an hour later, impressed. "You're giving me everything I need to dismantle them in court," she said. "This isn't just defense anymore. We're going to make them regret starting this." I asked what came next. "We prepare to push back. And we start calculating what they owe you." That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept without dreaming of lawsuits, spreadsheets, or Mia's text messages. But it wasn't peace. It was the calm before something bigger. They wanted a battle. I was ready to architect a war. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from betrayal, the kind that doesn't just weigh on your body, but your sense of identity. I felt it as I sat in Ms. Ventura's office again, going over our next steps. She looked up from the spreadsheets I'd compiled and said, "You've done more legwork than some forensic accountants I know." I didn't laugh. I couldn't. All I could think was, why did I have to do this at all? We finalized the motion to dismiss, attaching a binder full of proof, texts, screenshots, bank logs, annotated statements. 5 years of financial generosity, now rebranded as failure to uphold a moral contract. The countersuit was more delicate. Ms. Ventura was cautious but confident. "We're going after them not just for malicious prosecution, but for intentional infliction of emotional distress. That means we'll need to show their actions weren't just legally baseless, they were personal." That part was easy. I had hundreds of texts showing gratitude for voluntary help, along with 0 written obligations. But we also pulled up a string of Mia's Instagram captions and tweets. In one, she joked, "My bro's basically my second dad," without the lame jokes or curfew. In another, "Logan always pays, even when I say don't. He's just built like that." It was meant to be flattering. Now it felt like ammunition. We drafted a rough timeline for the emotional damages portion of the countersuit, starting with the job opportunity I'd lost due to the ethics complaint. Elena hadn't said it outright, but she'd gone with someone else for the lead project role. I heard it through the grapevine before HR confirmed it. "We just want someone whose hands are totally clean." I hadn't done anything wrong, but the stain had still spread. That night, I found myself doing something I hadn't done since high school. I started journaling again. Each page was a different date, a different loss. January 2019. Missed vacation with friends to help pay mom's surgery deposit. July 2020. Took on weekend shifts during the pandemic so dad didn't lose the house. March 2022. Mia's car broke down, and I paid $2,300 for repairs while skipping my own dental work. When you write it down, it's harder to lie to yourself. I printed the list, brought it into the next meeting with Ms. Ventura. She skimmed it and said, This is your story. Not theirs. Not the court's. Yours. We'll use what we need for the case. But don't stop writing." I left her office lighter that day. Not because the fight was over, it was far from it, but because I'd finally stopped asking why they did this to me. I started asking why I let them for so long. The motion to dismiss went out on a Thursday. Ms. Ventura emailed it to their counsel and sent me a copy with a subject line that just said, "Hammer dropped." It was 97 pages, plus exhibits. I opened it, skimmed the intro, and saw my life translated into legalese. The plaintiff's claims are unsupported by contractual or statutory obligations, and the respondent's financial contributions were voluntary acts of familial generosity. It should have made me feel vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. That weekend, I got a call from my Uncle Greg, my dad's older brother. We hadn't spoken in years. "I just found out what your parents did," he said. "I don't know what to say, Logan, but it's not right. If you ever need anything, I've got your back." I almost cried. Not because he offered help, but because it was the first time since this started that someone from the family actually called to check on me instead of attack me. Later that night, I pulled out the old notebook I'd started writing in. It wasn't just a journal anymore. It was becoming something more, part case file, part emotional archive. I added a new section, "The Future I'm Building." The first line read, "No one gets to dictate what I owe them just because we share blood." On the next workday, I did something bold. I scheduled a one-on-one with Elena, my boss. When I sat down across from her, I handed her a printout of the ethics complaint with annotations and a brief summary of the lawsuit. I didn't tell her everything, but I gave her enough. "I want you to hear this from me," I said, not through whispers. She read the first page, then looked up. "I appreciate the honesty, Logan. I never doubted your numbers. I just needed to make sure you were still focused." I nodded. "I am." Walking out of that meeting, I felt more like myself than I had in weeks. Not because the pressure was gone, it wasn't, but because I'd taken control. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was deciding how to be seen. That weekend, I started sketching plans again. Architectural doodles, mock-ups for side projects I'd shelved long ago. It was a quiet signal to myself. You're allowed to build something just for you. I booked a solo trip for the following month, nothing dramatic, just a cabin up north, hiking trails, and no cell service. I didn't tell anyone, not even Ms. Ventura. For once, I wasn't seeking permission or approval. Just air, space, a start. It was a symbolic first step, but it mattered. I wasn't running away. I was reminding myself what it felt like to move without being pulled. Later that night, I got a text from a blocked number. I shouldn't have looked. Curiosity won. It was Mia. "I know you're mad, but you left us no choice. No apology. No accountability. Just that chilling sentence that made my stomach flip. It was her way of rewriting the story, casting me as the abandoner, the selfish one, the villain for saying enough. I didn't respond. I copied the message, timestamp and all, and added it to the lawsuit folder. Then I blocked the number again, permanently. If I responded, it would drag me back into their script. I wasn't the antagonist here. I wasn't even a character in their narrative anymore. I was the author of my own. For years, I thought love was sacrifice. I thought showing up meant giving more than you had. But now, finally, I was starting to understand. Love doesn't demand your ruin. Not even from your family. The first sign of movement came 2 weeks later, an email from the opposing counsel. They'd received our dismissal motion and strongly objected to its characterization of events. Ms. Ventura smirked when she read it. "That's legal code for, we didn't think you'd fight back." Their rebuttal was sloppy, emotionally charged, full of vague claims. Phrases like pattern of abandonment and moral dereliction. But they couldn't produce a single signed document or obligation clause. Just indignation that I had stopped paying. I read their response 3 times and felt nothing. No panic. No shame. Just a dull recognition that their strategy was emotional blackmail dressed in litigation. Ms. Ventura responded with a pointed 2-page letter that dismantled their rhetoric, attaching annotated receipts, transfer logs, and text evidence again. Meanwhile, my own countersuit draft was coming together. I compiled not just the financial losses, $186,000 and counting, but also a breakdown of the psychological toll. I'd lost a promotion. I'd endured public doubt. I'd been treated like a villain by people I used to call my foundation. One entry read, "Night terrors twice a week since lawsuit filed." Another, "Declined 2-date invitations due to paranoia about motives." I even included the growing list of relationships I'd paused or outright lost, friends I'd stopped seeing, coworkers I'd grown distant from. Ms. Ventura read the full file and said, "You're building something powerful, not just in court, but for yourself." At work, I leaned in harder, not to prove I was fine, but to reclaim my rhythm. I finished 3 reports early, volunteered to mentor a new hire, and even cracked a joke in the Monday meeting. A real one. The kind that made people laugh without pity. Elena called me into her office. "You've had a rough month," she said, "but your performance hasn't slipped. If anything, it's sharpened." She paused, then added, "You're back on the list for Q4 leadership training. That project's yours if you want it." For the first time, I didn't doubt that I'd earned it. I also kept journaling more than ever now. I wasn't just cataloging pain. I was documenting progress. I added a new section titled Reconstruction. It had its own categories: legal clarity, emotional boundaries, financial independence, future plans. Then something strange happened. I started sleeping again. Not always through the night. Not peacefully. But it wasn't dread keeping me up anymore. It was thought, planning, hope. That weekend, I mailed myself a letter with no return address. Inside was a single sentence. You do not need to prove your worth keeping. I sealed it, set a calendar reminder to open it in 6 months. It felt like an anchor I'd buried for my future self. A tether to the man I was becoming. 3 weeks after we filed the countersuit, the judge issued a ruling on the motion to dismiss. I was on my lunch break when the email came through, subject line, decision rendered. My hand shook as I opened the file. Ms. Ventura had already texted, "Call me as soon as you see it." The suit was dismissed. Fully. No mediation. No partial hearing. The judge's language was crisp. The court finds no legal merit in the plaintiff's claim. The respondent's financial support was voluntary and unsolicited. I sat there, holding my phone in a shaky grip, rereading those words like they might vanish. Then I called Ms. Ventura. "Congratulations," she said. "You're free of it, at least legally. Now let's move to step 2. The countersuit went in that afternoon. A polished 78-page filing detailing malicious prosecution, reputational harm, and emotional distress. It didn't just contain evidence. It told a story, the story of how familial obligation had been weaponized against me. My family responded in silence. No apology. No email. Just an automated response from their attorney that said, "Received." That weekend, I took the cabin trip. Just me, a backpack, a notebook, and 3 days of quiet. I hiked, I sketched, I sat by a fire and stared at nothing in particular. But something inside was moving again. Not rage. Not grief. Possibility. I reread my old entries, the ones full of self-blame, bargaining, and desperation, and then wrote a new one. "They don't get to define me," I scrawled. Not in court. Not in memory. I burned the page. It wasn't for future reference. It was for release. When I got back home, I changed my phone number. I didn't send an update. I didn't check for missed messages. I deleted the family chat archive. The next Monday, I brought donuts to the office. Not as a performance, just as a thank you. Small talk came easier now. I even joined the happy hour I used to dodge. One of the interns asked me about leadership training. I smiled and told them they'd be fine. Just listen, ask questions, and never pretend to know everything. Tasha texted later that night. "Proud of you. And not surprised. You're finally treating yourself how you've always treated everyone else." I sat with that for a while. Then I went to my desk drawer and pulled out the letter I'd mailed myself weeks ago. I slid it open, unfolded the paper, and read the line. "You do not need to prove your worth keeping." I didn't cry. I didn't break. I just read it again, softly, like a vow. And I believed it.